We are alive.
Yay! I am old new dude. He is.
True York, Asher's trueborn son.
Next week, I will have my beard trimmed up. I've been
No,
letting it.
no. I won't be here next week. Remember, I gotta go to my dad's 30th birthday party.
That's right. I see how you are. You put your dad above me. That's fine. Uh, the week after that, then I will have my beard trimmed. I've been letting it grow and just, I don't know, trying to look like old man Logan. I don't know. But I will clean it up and then see if I can get some of this damn gray hair out of it. But that's neither here nor there. Um, I, I was planning, well, actually, we were planning on trying to do a theory video, and we have a very large problem, or I have a very large problem when Carter, he was out Wednesday, Thursday, today, now Saturday and Sunday, uh, and he goes back to 4 days next week for his last week of summer school. He has my phone from the time he wakes up to the time he goes to bed. My phone is near him. He's using it. If he's playing, it's laying right there beside him. So me and Richard were trying to get together for a theory video. Didn't get the message in time. We're like, well, it's probably better with Carter having the phone. If you call me, apparently he did call, and Carter hung up on him.
No,
Uh,
you got the voice now.
I went to voicemail. Um,
I hit ignore.
yeah, I don't know what he does, but that didn't work out either. So we'll try to come up with a new system, not next week, but the week after that, to where I just physically call Richard to where we can talk.
Sounds
Uh,
good.
that's probably going to be the best bet going forward. So hopefully the ball doesn't get dropped. So all right,
All right.
that's
Sorry,
it. That's all I got.
sweating a little bit because it's been hot and my body hasn't accommodated. But we'll be all right, I guess. Other than I'll be dripping the whole time.
Hey, Crow and Mother, how y'all doing?
Yep. Chris is waiting for a while. Mother Royan is waiting for an Uber and will join once she gets home. Storm 55, on 7, the death of Egret. They woke to the smoke of Mole's Town burning. Atop the king's tower, Jon Snow leaned on the padded crutch that Maester Aemon had given him and watched the great plume rise. Stir had lost all hope of taking Castle Black unawares and escaped him. Yet even so, he need not have warned of his approach so bluntly. They may kill us, he reflected. No one will be butchered in their beds. That much I did at least. His legs still hurt like blazes when he put his weight on it. He needed Clytus to help him don his fresh-washed blacks and lace up his boots that morning. By the time they were done, he'd wanted to drown himself in the milk of the puppy. Instead, he'd settled for half a cup of dream wine, a chew of willow bark, and a crutch. The beacon was burning on Weatherback Ridge. Night's watch at the feet of every man. I can fight, he insisted when they tried to stop him. Your leg's healed, is it? Roy snorted. You won't mind me giving it a little kick then. Sooner you didn't. It's stiff, but I can hobble around well enough. Stand and fight if you have need of me. I have need of every man who knows which end of the spear to stab into the wildlings. The pointy end. John had told his little sister something like that once, he remembered. And that's a season 1 reference. Sorry, Preston Jacobs in the Order of the Green Hand reference to the season which should not be named because every time in season 8 when there'd be something, they would do that. And
Yeah.
Mary Ellen started doing it on Order of the Green Hand too. Nora rubbed the bristle on his chin. Might be you'll do. We'll put you on a tower with a longbow. If you bloody well fall off, don't come crying to me. You could see the King's Road wending its way south through stony brown fields and over windswept hills. The Bagnar would be coming up that road before the day was done, its stems marching behind with axes and spears in their hands, their bronze and leather shields on their backs. Grig the goat, Quart, Big Boil, and the rest were coming as well. Wellings had never been his friends. He'd not allowed them to be his friends, but her, odd, at least John, in his dreamline state, kept track of which arrows he used. Oh, of course he did. Yep. He could feel the throb of pain where her arrow had gone through. Sorry. This is definitely the thing to focus on here, right? He could throb of pain where her arrow had gone through the meat and muscle of his thigh. He remembered the old man's eyes, too, and the black blood rushing up his throat as the storm cracked overhead. But he remembered the grotto best of all, the look of her naked in the torchlight, the taste of her mouth when it opened under his. Egret, stay away. Go south and raid. Go hide in one of those round towers you liked so well. You'll find nothing here but death. That much is true. Across the yard, one of the bowmen on the roof of the old Flint barracks had unlaced his breeches and was kissing the colonel. Molly, he knew from the man's greasy orange hair. Men in black cloaks were visible on other roofs and tower tops as well, though 9 of every 10 happened to be made of straw. Scarecrow sentinels, Donald Lloyd called them. Only we're the crows, John mused. Most of us were scared enough. There seems to be a lot of pissing in John and Arya chapters. Anyway, I guess Tyrion too. Now I think about it, I guess there's just a lot.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's just the way of life that they just whip it out and go. I mean, it's not the because you got. I mean, stop and think about it. I'm not condoning it, so don't give me no hate mail or anything. But you got Arya, Gendry, all them guys. I mean, they're all sleeping pretty much naked in a bed, in a hotel, whatever you call it, in. They've seen their brothers. I mean, it's just they're not as what's the word I'm looking for?
Modest.
Yeah, that's the word. It's just life's too short. They're too close together. There's no TV, so things happen.
Lady Thistle says, "Love that part. She shot me and murdered that innocent man. But that booty, though. Okay, John."
That's probably the greatest thing Lady Thistle has ever said.
I don't know. She said a lot of great things.
Yeah, that's true.
John had 6 scarecrows sharing the roof of King's Tower, with 2 actual breathing brothers. Deaf Dick Pollard sat in a cradle, methodically cleaning and oiling the mechanism of his crossbow to make sure the wheel turned smoothly, while the old town boy wandered restlessly around the parapets, fussing the clothes on straw men. Maybe he thinks they'll fight better if they're posed just right. Or maybe this waiting is fraying his nerves the way it's fraying mine. And Close the Door and Come Here was saying that they think it's funny that George's dicks always have these. He always has something with them. It's nimble dick. It's deaf dick. The boy claimed to be 18, older than John, but he was green as summer grass for all that. Satin, they called him. Even in the warm mail and boiled leather of the Night's Watch, the name he'd gotten in the brothel where he'd been born and raised. He was pretty as a girl with his dark eyes, soft skin, and raven ringlets. Half a year. It's kind of funny for John to be saying he's pretty as a girl, considering that's what the Wildlings keep saying about him. Half a year at Castle Black had toughened up his hands, however, and Noy said he was passable with the crossbow, but they had the courage to face what was coming. John used the crutch to limp across the tower. King's Tower was not the castle's tallest. The high, slim, crumbling lance held that honor, though awful Yarwick had heard to say it might topple any day. Could that be some foreshadowing right there?
Possibly.
Yeah. Nor is the King's Tower strongest. The Tower of Guards beside the King's Road would be a tougher nut to crack. But it was tall enough, strong enough, well placed beside the wall, overlooking the gate at the foot of the wooden stair. Now, why might that be important?
Exactly.
First time he had seen Castle Black with his own eyes, John had wondered why anyone would be so foolish to build a castle without walls. How could it be defended? It can't, his uncle told him. That is the point. The Night's Watch has pledged to take no part in the quarrels of the realm, yet over the centuries certain lords commander, proud and wise, forgot their vows and near destroyed us all with their ambitions. Lord Commander Runsell Hightower tried to bequeath the watch to his bastard son. Commander Roderick Flint thought to make himself king beyond the wall. Tristan Mudd, Mad Mark, Rakenfell, Robin Hill. Did you know that 600 years ago the commanders at Snowgate and the Night Fort went to war against each other? And when the Lord Commander tried to stop them, they joined forces to murder him? The Stark and Winterfell had to take a hand. Both their heads. They did it easily because their strongholds were not defensible. Hey, you switch sides. The Night's Watch had 996 Lords Commander before GR4, most of them men of courage and honor. We have had cowards and fools as well. Our tyrants and our madmen. We survive because the lords and kings of the 7 kingdoms know that we pose no threat to them, no matter who should lead us. Our only foes are to the north. To the north we have the wall. Only now those foes have gotten past the wall and come up from the south, John reflected. The lords and kings of the 7 kingdoms have forgotten us. caught between the hammer and the anvil. It's interesting that the North is designed this way on both sides, right? It can defend itself from the South, and it can defend itself from the North, but the choke points cannot be defended from the opposite directions.
Ooh, that is nice.
Right? Mokelan's a ruin, right? And
Right.
Rob's even talked about that. Yeah, it's impregnable from the South, but it's not impregnable from the North.
Right.
But it's the same. It's a mirror image of both directions.
I never thought about that. That's pretty cool.
Also, that's a historical reference to the hammer and the anvil. It's from the second and third novellas, which is also brought up by Barristan, Wind's Winter.
I thought it was a move.
Without a wall, Castle Black could not be held. Donald Lloyd knew that as well as any. The castle does them no good, the armorer told his little garrison. Kitchens, common halls, stables, even the towers. Let them take it all. We'll empty the armory and move what stores we can to the top of the wall and make our stand around the gate. Castle Black had a wall of sorts at last. A crescent-shaped barricade 10 feet high made of stores, casks of nails, and barrels of salt mutton, crates, bales of black broadcloth, stacked logs, sawn timbers, fire-hardened stakes, and sacks of grain. Crude rampart closed the two things most worth defending: the gate to the north and the foot of the great wooden switchback stair that clawed and climbed its way up the face of the wall like a drunken thunderbolt, supported by wooden beams as big as tree trunks in the ice. And of course, some of those things that they've listed are rather flammable. But we're going to get to some more here.
Yeah.
Last few moles were still making the long climb, John saw, urged on by his brothers. Brett was carrying a little boy in his arms, while Pip, 2 flights below, let an old man lean up on his shoulder. The oldest villagers still waited below for the cage to make his way back down to them. He saw a mother pulling along 2 children, one on either hand, as an older boy ran past her up the steps. 200 feet above them, Sky Blue Sue and Lady Meliana, who was no lady, all her friends agreed, stood on a landing looking south. They had a better view of the smoke than he did, no doubt. John wondered about the villagers who had chosen not to flee. There were always a few, too stubborn or too stupid or too brave to run. A few who preferred to fight or hide or bend the knee. Maybe the fence would spare them. It doesn't seem like hiding in Molestown could be effective, no matter how the show depicted it, right? Because it is below ground.
Well, you got to stop and think. I mean, it's basically a maze underground, and not every offshoot of a hallway, for lack of a better word, the tunnel. I mean, there's probably dozens of places to hide there that people won't find you,
right?
Unless they knew it was there.
And as long as the opening as long as the openings nearest you that you're hiding in don't have lots of flammable things above ground right near them, so that would consume too much of the oxygen potentially as it burns.
Right.
Anyway, the thing to do would be to take the attack to them, he thought. With 50 rangers well mounted, we could cut them apart on the road. We didn't have 50 rangers, though, or half as many horses. The garrison did not return, and there was no way to know just where they were, or even whether the riders that Noy had sent out could reach them. So there's some nice foreshadowing for Stannis doing something like that, though, right?
Yeah.
It's also interesting because it kind of makes it sound like John is arguing in favor of season 8 and using the cavalry to actually launch an attack, right? Because cavalry aren't nearly as useful if you're going to be just standing up on the wall. Anyway.
Well, I mean, he's also backing what G.R. Mormont said about the 100,000 wildlings. The best way to take them on was with small numbers of mounted knights, basically just messing with them.
And Stannis shows that that's true. Yep, we talked about that at the time.
Yeah.
We are the garrison, John told himself, and look at us. The brothers Bow and Marsh had left behind were old men, cripples, and green boys, just as Donnoy had warned him. He could see some wrestling barrels up the steps, others on the barricades, stout old kegs as slow as ever, spare boot hopping along briskly on his carved wooden leg. Half mad Easy, who fancied himself glorying in the fool reborn. Dornish Dilly, Red Allen of the Rosewood, young Henley, well past 50, old Henley, well past 70, Harry Howe, the spotted pate of Maidenpool, couple of them saw John looking down from the top of the king's tower and waved up at him. Others turned away. They still think he a turncloak. It was a bitter draught to drink. John could
Man,
not wait.
that's kind of. I mean, I would assume that they had a previous bias because his
Oh, yeah.
warning is what's saving lives here. I
Right.
mean,
Right. You'd think that would convince a lot of them. Absolutely. He was a bastard after all. Everyone knew that bastards were wanton and treacherous by nature, born of lust and deceit. I suppose one could argue he was born of lust and deceit. I wouldn't really, but one could. And he had made as many enemies as friends at Castle Black. Rasp, for one. John had once threatened to have Ghost rip his throat out unless he stopped tormenting Samuel Farley. Rasp did not forget things like that. He was breaking dry leaves into piles under the stairs just now, but every so often he stopped long enough to give John a nasty look. After this chapter, he won't be giving John any more nasty looks.
there you go.
No, Donald Norrie roared at three of the Molestown men down below. The pitch goes to the hoist, the oil up the steps, crossbow bolts to the fourth, fifth, sixth landings, spears to first and second. Stack the lard under the stair. Yes, there, behind the planks. The Casimir barricade. Now, you poxy plow pushers, now! The lard under the stair is supposed to not quite make sense until reread.
Yeah.
He has a lord's voice, John thought. His father had always said that in battle, a captain's lungs were as important as a sword arm. It doesn't matter how brave or brilliant the man is, his commands cannot be heard, Lord Edward told his sons. So Robin used to climb the towers of Winterfell and shouted at each other across the yard. Donald
I
Norrie.
know I've said this before when they've talked about this. When you get to boot camp, the main reason they want you basically yelling at the top of your lungs, yes, sir, I mean, whatever it is you have to say, is to strain your vocal cords to the point where you're squeaking, because when they're no longer when they heal, you have you can get a deeper and higher register and still be audible as what you're saying versus just being loud and unaudible because everything kind of drowns together.
Exercise and is training your vocal cords to be able to do those things.
Now I'll go ahead and tell you, Chris probably hated that. One quality I had with him growing up, I could say no or stop really, really loud to get him to stop whatever he was doing. But there's that.
Donald Norrie could have drowned out both of them. The moles all went in terror of him, and rightfully so, since he was always threatening to rip their heads off. That's interesting, because rip their heads off is what the others do, how the others often kill people, or not the others, but the whites.
Right.
This also goes to Roose and the Night of the Laughing Tree theory about Roose potentially being the Night of the Laughing Tree. It's one of multiple clues that Roose can have a booming voice when he needs to. I'm definitely not endorsing that theory, but I always like to explore interesting alternative interpretations.
There might be if the bolt-on theory is correct, there might be a reason that he does that, to where his voice isn't recognizable from the previous Bolton that older people might recognize.
Well, some of that is we actually do at one point see his voice booming.
Yes, he has the capability.
Madness thing, right? He does the stop the madness thing, kind of like Robert.
Right. And I'm saying he has the ability to speak as loud as everybody else. I'm saying a possibility of him whispering is to where people don't recognize his voice.
Right. And that's the point of the theory, is that he seems to actually does have a booming voice when he needs to use it. He's clearly a battle commander, and so the booming voice could be somebody who nobody can recognize their voice. Anyway, that was kind of the theory, that he was doing it to win favor with, and he does talk about why is he comparing his son to Lord Rickard's daughter, and it might be because he's referring to Alice, and it's a reference to Alice and her ability to escape everybody on a horse. Lord Rickard's daughter could mean Alice, or it could be that he thinks about how much Lyanna was good, and he can actually compare Domeric and to two people who weren't contemporary, because he actually was really close to Lyanna and was helping her and stuff. That's kind of anyway. It's kind of silly, but anyway, I'm like, wow, that's interesting that they managed to build a theory. Mother Wine, home now, no longer anemic, but I need more veggies. Congrats. Yes. 3/4 of the village had taken John's warning to heart and come to Castle Black for refuge. Roy had decreed that every man still spry enough to hold a spear or swing an axe would help defend the barricade, else they could damn well go home and take their chances with the fence. He'd emptied the armory to put good steel in their hands. Big double-bladed axes, razor-sharp daggers, long swords, maces, spiked morning stars, patent studded leather jerkins, and mail hauberks with greaves for their legs and gorgets to keep their heads on their shoulders. A few of them even looked like soldiers in a bad light. It's a squint. Roy had put the women and children to work as well. Those too young to fight would carry water and tend the fires. The Molestown midwife would assist Clytus and Maester Aemon with the wounded. And Three-Finger Hobbs suddenly had more spit boys, kettle stirrers, and onion choppers than he knew what to do with. Two of the whores had even offered to fight, and had shown enough skill with the crossbow to be given a place on the steps 40 feet up. It's cold, Satin stood with his hands tucked in his armpits under his cloak. His cheeks were bright red. John made himself smile. The frostfangs are cold. This is a brisk autumn day. Hope I never see the frostfangs then. I knew a girl in Old Town who liked to ice her wine. That's the best place for ice, I think, in wine. So ice was made in the hottest climates on Earth centuries before refrigeration by using radiative cooling. So Dorne and Old Town could have ice without needing to travel or trade. I've seen people talk about, well, you could go up in the mountains and you'd bring down. People don't need to do that, right? I mean, it's specifically like North Africa and the Indian subcontinent where we know that for centuries they were making ice. Many centuries before refrigeration was a thing. So what you do is you use reeds to like block in so that there'll be no wind, and you get a thin pan of water, and you make sure that there'll be no wind, and it's facing the night sky on a dark night, and everything radiates off heat. So heat leaves you. Black body radiation of space is barely above absolute zero. So you will radiate off heat to space. If you can avoid too much heat exchange happening with the air, so you can get the air still, then you can create ice in hot climates. And humans have been doing this for centuries. So anyway,
Okay.
just because it kind of annoys me when I hear people say, well, how would they have ice? Did George forget? No, George apparently knows more about ice and warm climates than you do.
They watched the Mosquito Coast with the Harrison Ford.
Oh, does that have something about that?
Well, yeah, he made a big giant. They called it Frankenstein. It made big old giant block of ice, and then it shows them carrying it up to um, um, up. I forget how far, but the big block just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But by the time he got to the farther tribes or whatever, they had this little block about yay big of ice that started out uh, like half the size of my bed over there. I mean, it took like 8 men to carry it, and then the last one was just one person holding it. Never mind.
I mean, ice was natural gas as opposed to electricity.
Think about it.
Oh well, so the way refrigeration typically works is you flash a gas, right, and then the expansion of the gas absorbs heat. Anyway. Side glance south, frown. Think the Scarecrow Sentinel scared them off, my lord? We can hope. It was possible, John supposed, but more likely the wildlings simply paused for a bit of rape and plunder in Molestown. Maybe Stir was waiting for nightfall to move up under cover of darkness. Midday came and of course that's what it is, right? Midday came and went. Still no sign of Fens on the King's Road. John heard footsteps inside the tower, though, and Owen the Oath popped up out of the trap door, red-faced from the climb. He had a basket of buns under one arm, a wheel of cheese under the other, a bag of onions dangling from one hand. Hobbs said to feed you in case you're stuck up here a while. That or before our last meal. Thank him for us, Owen. Dick Follett was deaf as a stone, but his nose worked well enough. The buns were still warm from the oven when he went digging in the basket and plucked one out. Found a crock of butter as well and spread some with his dagger. Raisins, he announced happily. Nuts, too. His speech was thick, but easy enough to understand once you got used to it. You can have mine, too, said Satin. I'm not hungry. Eat, John told him. There's no knowing when you'll have another chance. He took 2 buns himself. The nuts were pine nuts. Besides the raisins, there were bits of dried apple. Will the wildlings come today, Lord Snow? Owen asked. We don't know if they do, said John. Listen for the horns. Two. Two is for wildlings. One was tall, tow-headed, and amiable. A tireless worker, surprisingly deft when it came to working wood and fixing catapults and the like. But as he'd gladly tell you, his mother had dropped him on his head when he was a baby, and half its wits had leaked out through his ear. You remember where to go? John asked him. I'm to go to the stairs, Illinois says. I'm to go up to the third landing and shoot my crossbow down at the wildlings if they try to climb over the barrier. The third landing. 1, 2, 3. His head bobbed up and down. The wildlings attack. King will come and help us, won't he? He's a mighty warrior, King Robert. He's sure to come. Maester Aemon sent him a bird. There was no use telling him that Robert Baratheon was dead. He would forget it, as he'd forgotten it before. Maester Aemon sent him a bird, John agreed. That's to make Owen happy. Maester Aemon had sent a lot of birds, not the one king, but the 4. Wildlings at the gate, the message ran. Realm in danger. Send all the help you can to Castle Black. We went as far as Old Town and the Citadel the Ravens flew, 100 mighty lords in their castles. The northern lords offered their best hope, so them Aemon sent 2 birds. The Umbers and the Boltons, Castle Kerwin, Torrance Square, Carhold, Deepwood Mott, Bear Island, Oldcastle, Widow's Watch, White Harbor, Barrowtown, the Rills, the mountain fastnesses of the Littles, the Burleys, the Norries, the Harclays, and the Wolves. The Black Birds brought their fleet. Wildlings at the gate, the north in danger, come with all your strength. Some of these are paired up, the Umbers and the Boltons, the Castle Kerwin and Torrance Square, Carhold and Deepwood Mott. Anyway, it's going to compare some of them. Well, ravens might have wings, but lords and kings do not. If help was coming, it would not come today. As morning turned to afternoon, the smoke of Molestown blew away, and the southern sky was clear again. No clouds, thought John. That was good. Rain or snow could doom them all. Oh, there's a really big hint right there of what's going on, isn't there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch that. I was making notes. Anyway, Clytus and Maester Aemon rode the winch cage up to safety at the top of the wall, and most of them must have lives as well. Men in black cloaks paced restlessly up on the tower tops and shouted back and forth across the courtyards. Something Celador, I guess, or Celador. I never know. Celador? I don't know. Led the
They
men.
sold one to
Yeah,
Celador.
kind of, something like that, yeah. Led the men on the barricade in a prayer, beseeching the warrior to give them strength. Deaf Dick followed, curled up beneath his cloak, and went to sleep. Sat and walked 100 leagues in circles, round and round the crenellations. The wall wept, the sun crept across a hard blue sky. Near evenfall, Owen the Oaf returned with a loaf of black bread and a pail of Hobbs' best mutton, cooked in a thick broth of ale and onions. Even Dick woke up for that. They ate every bit of it, using chunks of bread to wipe the bottom of the pail. By the time they were done, the sun was low in the west, the shadows sharp and black throughout the castle. Light the fire, John told Sadden. Fill the kettle with oil. So that's interesting. He's ready for the attack right now. He's preparing. He's like, they're going to come at sundown, basically. He's already figured this out. Yep. He went downstairs himself to bar the door to try and work some of the stiffness from his leg. That was a mistake, and John soon knew it. He clutched the crutch and saw it through all the same. The door of the king's tower was oak studded with iron. Oak and iron guard me well. It might delay the fence, but it would not stop them if they wanted to come in. John slammed the bar down in its notches, paid a visit to the privy, might well be his last chance, and hobbled back up to the roof, grimacing at the pain. The west had gone the color of a blood bruise. The sky above was cobalt blue, deepening to purple, and the stars were coming out. John sat between 2 merlins with only a scarecrow for company and watched the stallion gallop up the sky. Was it the Horned Lord? He wondered where Ghost was now. He wondered about Egret as well. He told himself that way lay madness. If I look back, I am lost. They came in the night, of course, like thieves, John thought, like murderers. Sadden pissed himself when the horns blew. John pretended not to notice. Go shake Dick by the shoulder, he told the old hound boy, else he's liable to slip through the fight. I'm frightened. Sadden's face was a ghastly white. So are they. John leaned his crutch up against the merlin and took up his longbow, bending the smooth, thick Dornish yew to slip a bowstring through the notches. Don't waste a quarrel unless you know you have a good, clean shot, he said when Sadden returned to Dick. You have an ample supply up here, but ample doesn't mean inexhaustible. Step behind a merlin to reload. Don't try and hide in back of a scarecrow. If made of straw, an arrow will punch through them. Not bother telling Dick Pollard anything. Dick could read your lips if there was enough light. Gave a damn what you were saying. Knew it all already. The three of them took up positions on three sides of the round tower. John hung a quiver from his belt, pulled an arrow. The shaft was black, the fletching gray. So it's black with gray goose feathers, at least in this light for this specific arrow. Egret's is black with white duck feathers, but he will change arrows twice without commenting on the feathers. As he notched it to his string, he remembered something that Theon Greyjoy had once said after a hunt. The boar could keep his tusks and the bear his claws, he declared, smiling that way he did. There's nothing half so mortal as a gray goose feather. John had never been half the hunter that Theon was. He was no stranger to the longbow either. There were dark shapes slipping around the armory, backs against the stone. But he could not see them well enough to waste an arrow. He heard distant shouts and saw the archers on the tower of guards loosing shafts at the ground. That was too far off to concern John. But when he glimpsed three shadows detach themselves from the old stables 50 yards away, he stepped up to the crenel, raised his bow, and drew. They were running, so he led them, waiting. They were made a soft hiss as it left his string. A moment later, there was a grunt. Suddenly, two shadows were looking across the park. They ran all the faster, but John had already pulled a second arrow from his quiver. This time, he hurried the shot too much and missed. Wildlings were gone by the time he knocked again. He searched for another target and found four, rushing around the empty shell of the Lord Commander's keep. The moonlight glimmered off their spears and axes, and the gruesome devices on their round leathern shields. Skulls and bones, serpents, bear claws, twisted demonic faces. Threefold, he knew. Fens carried shields of black boiled leather with bronze rims and bosses. But theirs were plain and unadorned. These were the lighter wicker shields of raiders. John pulled the goose feather back to his ear, aimed and loosed the arrow, then knocked and drew and loosed again. So we're still on goose feathers, but he hasn't switched yet. First shaft pierced the bear claw shield, the second one the throat. Wildling screamed as he went down. He heard the deep thrum of Deaf Dick's crossbow to his left and sat just a moment later. I got one, the boy cried hoarsely. I got one in the chest. Get another, John called. Reminds me of Han Solo and Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
He did not have to search for targets now, only choose them. He dropped a wildling archer as he was fitting an arrow to his string, then sent a shaft toward the axeman hacking at the door of Hard's tower. That time he missed, but the arrow quivering in the oak made the wildling reconsider. It was only as he was running off that John recognized Big Boyle. Half a heartbeat later, old Mully put an arrow through his leg from the roof of the Flint barracks. He crawled off bleeding. That will stop him bitching about his Boyle, John thought. When his quiver was empty, he went to get another, moved to a different krenel, side by side with Deaf Dick Faller. John never mentions goose, duck, white, or gray here as he got another quiver. John got off 3 arrows for every bolt Deaf Dick discharged. Yep. For every bolt, but that was the advantage of the longbow. Crossbow penetrated better, some insisted, but it was slow and cumbersome to reload. You could hear the wildlings shouting to each other, and somewhere to the west, a war horn blew. The world was moonlight and shadow, and time became an endless round of notch and draw and loose. A wildling arrow ripped through the throat of the straw sentinel beside him. Snow scarcely noticed. Give me one clean shot, the Magnar of Thet, he prayed to his father's gods. The Magnar at least was a foe that he could hate. Give me stir. His fingers were growing stiff and his thumb was bleeding. Still John notched and drew and loosed. A gout of flame caught his eye, and he turned to see the common hall of fire. It was only a few moments before the whole great timbered hall was burning. Three-Finger Hob and his Molestown helpers were safe out the wall, he knew. It felt like a punch in the belly all the same. John, Deaf Dick yelled in his thick voice. The armory. They were on the roof, he saw. One had a torch. Dick hopped up on the crenel for a better shot, jerked his crossbow to his shoulder, and sent the quarrel thrumming toward the torchman. He missed. The archer down below him didn't. Pollard never made a sound, only toppled forward headlong over the parapet. It's 100 feet to the yard below. John heard the thump as he was peering round the straw soldier, trying to see where the arrow had come from. Not 10 feet from Deaf Dick's body, he glimpsed a leather shield, ragged cloak, a mop of thick red hair. Kissed by fire, he thought. Lucky. He brought his bow up, but his fingers would not part. She was gone as suddenly as she appeared. He swiveled, cursing, loosed the shaft of the men on the roof instead. He missed them as well. John had a shot at Egret and did not take it.
Yeah.
But then the east stables were afire too. Black smoke and burning hay pouring from the stalls. When the roof collapsed, flames rose up, roaring so loud they almost drowned out the war horns of the fence. 50 of them were pounding up the King's Road in tight column, their shields held up above their heads. Others were swarming through the vegetable garden, across the blacksmith yard, around the old dry well. Three had hacked their way through the doors of Maester Amon's apartments in the timber keep below the rookery. A desperate fight was going on atop the silent tower, longswords against bronze axes. None of that mattered. The dance has moved on, he thought. John hobbled across the satin, grabbed him by the shoulder. With me, he shouted. Together they moved to the north parapet. Thanks for reading this and saving my maester the time. Boris Baratheon. Oh, because Boris Baratheon can't read. Sorry, that's from he's the guy in episode 10 of House of the Dragon, right? He's the Baratheon from the dance. Famously, he has this maester read to him. There's always this question whether the maester was actually being honest and so forth. Together, they moved to the north parapet where the king's tower looked down on the gate. And Donald Roy's makeshift wall of logs and barrels and sacks of corn. The Fens were there before them. They wore half helms and had thin bronze discs sewn to their long leather shirts. Many wielded bronze axes, though few were chipped stone. More had short stabbing spears with leaf-shaped heads that gleamed redly in the light of the burning stables. They were screaming in the old tongue as they stormed the barricade, jabbing with their spears, swinging their bronze axes, spilling corn and blood with equal abandon while crossbow quarrels and arrows were down them to the archers that Donald had posted on the stair. What do we do? Satin shouted. Kill them, John shouted back, black arrow in his hand. No archer could have asked for an easier shot. Black arrow in his hand. Right. Of course, they're all black, so it doesn't help us any. Archer could have asked for an easier shot. The Fens had their backs to the king's tower as they charged the crescent, clambering over bags and barrels to reach the men in black. Both John and Satin chanced to choose the same target. He just reached the top of the barricade when an arrow sprouted from his neck and a quarrel between his shoulder blades. Half a heartbeat later, a longsword took him in the belly and he fell back onto the man behind him. John reached down to his quiver and found it empty again. So we specifically call out the first empty quiver, and here's the second. Satin was winding back his crossbow. He left him to it, went for more arrows, but he hadn't taken more than 3 steps before the trap slammed open 3 feet in front of him. Bloody hell. I never even heard the door break. There's no time to think or plan or shout for help. John dropped his bow, reached back over his shoulder, ripped the long claw from his sheath, buried the blade in the middle of the first head to pop up the tower. Bronze was no match for Valyrian steel. The blow sheared right through the Fen's helm and deep into his skull. He went crashing back down where he'd come from. There were more behind him, John knew from the shouting. He fell back and called to Satin. The next man to make the climb got a quarrel through his cheek. He vanished too. The oil, John said. Satin nodded. Together they snatched up the thick quilted pads they'd left beside the fire, lifted the heavy kettle of boiling oil, and dumped it down the hole on the Fens below. Sammy? Shrieks were as bad as anything he'd ever heard. Satin looked as though he was going to be sick. John kicked the trap door shut, set the heavy iron kettle on top of it, and gave the boy with the pretty face a hard shake. Wretch, later, John yelled. Come. They had only been gone to the pyramids for a few moments, but everything below had changed. A dozen black brothers and a few Molestown men still stood atop the crates and barrels, but the wildlings were swarming over all along the crescent, pushing them back. John saw one shove the spear up through Rast's belly so hard he lifted him into the air. Young Henley was dead and old Henley was dying, surrounded by foes. He could see Easy spinning and slashing, laughing like a loon, his cloak flapping as he leapt from cask to cask. Bronze axe caught him just below the knee, and the laughter turned into a bubbling shriek. They're breaking, Satin said. No, said John. They're broken. It happened quickly. One mole fled and then another, and suddenly all the villagers were throwing down their weapons and abandoning the barricade. Sammy, be quiet. Hey, Sammy, be quiet. No. Be a good boy. Be a good boy. John watched them try and form a line to fall back in order, but the Fens washed over them with spear and axe, and then they were fleeing too. Thornish Dilly slipped and went down on his face. A wildling planted a spear between his shoulder blades. Kegs, slow and short of breath, almost. Sammy, come here. Come here. Sammy, come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. A spear between his shoulder blades. Kegs, slow and short of breath, had almost reached the bottom step when a Fen caught the end of his cloak and yanked him around. But a crossbow quarrel dropped the man before his axe could fall. Got him, Satin crowed, as Kegs staggered to the stair and began to crawl up the steps on hands and knees. The gate is lost. Donanoy had closed and chained it. It was there for taking. The iron bars glimmering red with reflected starlight. The cold black tunnel behind. No one had fallen back to defend it. The only safety was on top of the wall, 700 feet up the crooked wooden stairs. What gods do you pray to? John asked Satin. The seventh, the boy from Old Town said. Pray then, John told him. Pray to your new gods, and I'll pray to my old ones, and I'll turn here. Confusion at the trapdoor, John had forgotten to fill his quiver. He limped back across the roof and did that now, and picked up his bow as well. There finally was the second refill. The kettle had not moved from where he left it, so it seemed as though they were safe enough for the nonce. The dances moved on, and were watching for the gallery, he thought as he hobbled back. Satin was loosening quarrels with the Wellington steps, then ducking down behind a merlin to cock the crossbow. He may be pretty, but he's quick. The real battle was on the steps. Roy had put spearmen on the two lowest landings, but the headlong flight of the villagers had panicked them. They had joined the fight, racing up the third landing with the fens, killing anyone who fell behind. The archers and crossbowmen on the higher landings were trying to drop shafts over their heads. John knocked an arrow, drew and loosed. He was pleased when one of the wildlings went rolling down the steps. The heat of the fires was making the wall. The flames danced and shimmered against the ice. The steps shook to the men with lives. Hanson moved on. Again, John notched and drew and loosed, but there was only one of him and one of Satin, and a good 60 or 70 fens pounding up the stairs, killing as they went, drunk on victory. On the fourth landing, three brothers in black cloaks stood shoulder to shoulder with longswords in their hands. The battle was joined again briefly. There were only three, and soon enough the wildling's tide washed over them, and their blood dripped down the steps. Man is never so vulnerable in battles when he flees, Lord Eddard told John once. A running man is like a wounded animal to a soldier, gets his bloodlust up. The archers on the fifth landing fled before the battle even reached them. It was a rout, a red rout. The torches, John told Satin. There were four of them stacked beside the fire, their heads wrapped in oily rags. There were a dozen fire arrows, too. Old Town Boy thrust one torch in the fire until it was blazing brightly, brought the rest back under his arm, unlit. He looked frightened again, as well he might. John was frightened, too. It was then that he saw a stir. Magnar was climbing up the barricade, over the gutted corn sacks and smashed barrels and the bodies of friends and foe alike. His bronze scale armor gleamed darkly in the firelight. Stir had taken off his helm to survey the scene of his triumph. The bald, earless horse son was smiling. So horse son is just a fancy word for bastard, so if John believed himself a bastard, it's somewhat ironic.
Yeah.
In his hand was a long weirwood spear with an ornate bronze head. When he saw the gate, he pointed the spear at it and barked something in the old tongue to the half-dozen men around him. Too late, John thought. You should have led your men over the barricade. You might have been able to save a few. Up above, a war horn sounded, long and low, not from the top of the wall, but from the ninth landing, some 200 feet up. Donald Noy was standing. John notched a fire arrow to his bowstring and sat and lit it from the torch. He stepped to the parapet, drew, aimed, loosed. Ribbons of flame trailed behind as the shaft sped downward and thudded into its target, crackling. Not Stir, the steps, or more precisely the casks and kegs and sacks that Donald had piled up beneath the steps, as high as the first landing. Barrels of lard and lamp oil, bags of leaves and oily rags, split logs, bark, and wood shavings. Again, said John. Again. Again. Other longbowmen were firing too, from every tower top in range. Some sending their arrows up in high arcs to drop before the wall. When John ran out of fire arrows, he and Satin began to light the torches and fling them from the crenels. Up above, another fire was blooming. Old wood steps had drunk up oil like a sponge. Donald Boy had drenched them from the ninth landing all the way down to the seventh. John could only hope that most of their own people had staggered up to safety before going through the torches. Black brothers at least had known the plan, but the villagers had not. Kind of reminds me of Tywin and his people breaking without knowing the plan, looking more genuine as they fled.
Right.
Wind and fire did the rest. All John had to do was watch. With flames below and flames above, the wildlings had nowhere to go. Some continued upward and died. Some went downward and died. Some stayed where they were. They died as well. Many left from the steps before they burned, died from the fall. 20-odd fens were still huddled together between the fires, where the ice cracked in the heat. The whole lower third of the stair broke off along with several tons of ice. That was the last that John saw of Stir Magnar's den. The long fens itself, he thought. John asked Satin to help him down to the yard. His wounded leg was so badly that he could hardly walk even with the crutch. Bring the torch, she told the boy from Old Town. I need to look for someone. There have been mostly fens in the steps. Surely some of the freeform escaped. Mance's people, not the Magnars. She might have been one. So they climbed down past the bodies of the men who tried the trap door. John wandered through the dark with his crutch under one arm, and the other around the shoulders, like he'd been a whore in Old Town. The stables and the common hall were burned down to smoking cinders by then. The fire still raged along the wall, climbing step by step and landing by landing. From time to time, they'd hear a groan and then a crack, and another chunk would come crashing off the wall. The air was full of ash and ice crystals. Sammy? No. Hey. Sammy. No. Quiet. Leo. Too noisy. He found Court dead and Stone Thumbs dying. He found some dead and dying Fens he had never truly known. He found Big Boyle weak from all the blood he lost, but still alive. He found Egret sprawled across a patch of old snow beneath the Lord Commander's tower with an arrow between her breasts. The ice crystals had settled over her face, and in the moonlight it looked as though she wore a glittering silver mask. The arrow was black, John saw, but it was fletched with white duck feathers. Not mine, he told himself, not one of mine, but he felt as if it were. This is a rather ambiguous phrase. You tell yourself something when you're trying to convince yourself, and it almost sounds like he failed to convince himself. It can be interpreted as if he believes his second or third quiver had white duck feathers.
Also, the air full of ash and ice crystals could be foreshadowing, like when the wall falls.
Yeah, mixture of ice and ash. Yeah,
which would create the basically the nuclear winter.
Yep. Anyway, yeah, it definitely could be interpreted either way. Especially the way he makes it sound like maybe he failed to convince himself and he thinks it is his. Anyway.
Yeah.
When he knelt in the snow beside her, her eyes opened. John Snow, she said very softly. It sounded as though the arrow had found a lung. Is this a proper castle now, not just a tower? It is. John took her hand. It reminds me of the Doom a little too. Yeah, that's a good one. It is. John took her hand. Good, she whispered. I wanted to see one proper castle before I... You'll see 100 castles, he promised her. The battle's done. Maester Aemon will see to you. He touched her hair. You're kissed by fire, remember? Lucky. It will take more than an arrow to kill you. Aemon will draw it out and patch you up, and we'll get you some milk of the poppy for the pain. She just smiled at that. Do you remember that cave? We should have stayed in that cave. I told you so. We'll go back to the cave, he said. You're not going to die, Egret. You're not. Oh, Egret cupped his cheek with her hand. You know nothing, Jon Snow, she sighed, dying. Up next, Storm 56, Brand 4. Then pass, the door said.
One of the few wildlings that you're sad to see go.
Yeah, which is like he just points out someone I wrote. She shot me and murdered that innocent man with that booty. I'm putting that one back up. Putting Thistle's earlier comment back up there.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway.
Yeah. Which, and also, I mean, I don't know if I would count Tormund because of who I think he really is, which would explain in part why he is the way he is with Jon, for the love that he felt for Ned. It's passed on to the son. He might even know well, he definitely knows the full truth of who Jon is, if he is who I think he is. So, but Egret, I mean, so it's a rough death for Jon to deal with.
Oh yeah,
that's his first love.
Yep. Anyway,
and that booty.
Well, that and this brand chapter coming up is certainly a fun chapter. And there's a isn't there a pun with the whale, where they say whale and it's supposed to be it's supposed to refer to like the noise, but it's also referring to the fact that there's a kraken coming up out of the well or something. Anyway, I can't remember. I feel like he does a pun there with whale.
Well, there's 3 whales, isn't there? Well.
Oh, and then well too. Yeah. Anyway, I think it was LML that pointed out that the whale line there is deliberately supposed to be kind of punny. Anyway, pretty good chapter.
Yeah. I mean, it's not too long of a chapter either. I mean, we didn't talk about too much, so but still, I mean, it's
Yeah, we definitely talked about some things, and it still was
yeah,
under an hour. So yeah, absolutely.
roughly about what, about a little over a 40-minute read.
Yeah,
But when you add in what we talked about, you get to the 50-minute mark. So
that's nice.
yeah.
Let's see what's going on.
See, now you won't be here next week.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
what I'm gonna try to do, still, I got the phone right now, but the second I walk out of this bedroom and go back in the living room, I don't know how long I'll have the phone. But I'll message Lady Thistle about possibly doing like two theory videos because we haven't done any in a while. Which again, I'm a ghost on Discord. It it's not gonna lie. The second I get off of these live streams, my A Song of Ice and Fire funk just kind of sucks back in, and I'm not over it. It's hard to explain. Um, I want to talk about it more, but it's the second I get on here, I'm very happy. I'm like, yes, I get to talk to Richard. We get to talk about the book. We get to talk about things. But then the second I hit end, it's like Song of Ice and Fire. I mean, it's kind of. I'm still haven't watched the first episode of season 2 of House of the Dragon, which I don't like it as much as I do A Song of Ice and Fire. I'm not a big Targaryen person. I'm not sure how I feel about who they got playing Cregan. I told you a couple of things that I have that, other than my nitpick of how the dragons look, um, there being questions that are answered that I don't think should have been answered. Like my biggest one that I point out is ice. Um, we're told ice is 400 years old, that it's been in the family for 400 years, but nobody knows that. We're told that, and we're to accept that on face value. But I still like the theory that ice is made out of black fire and dark sister, because it has just enough metal to, guess what, make basically black fire dark sister again when it comes to Oathkeeper and uh, Widow's Well.
Okay, that's interesting.
But I mean, it's the second they show the sword in the show, which uh, then that question's answered because it's seen before Dark Sister and Blackfire go disappear. So
Yeah,
now that can't be it. So it's, I don't
yeah.
know. It's hard to
I think
explain.
that history does mention ice. I think the history does specifically mention ice. Yeah, I think that's true. Before they disappear.
I don't know. I'm not a big Targaryen person, so I mean, I like Danny, but I mean, I'm not. I don't want to. I don't know which brother married the sister, and I mean, I like dragons and everything, but I like the direwolves a little bit better. Sorry,
No,
I'm
that's right.
biased. If I have to vote, I vote John. Sorry.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's. I mean, I like it because Connell likes to. Ryan likes to throw in references to the books and things. So it's kind of fun little Easter eggs and things.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, you still get to see that world.
yeah, he is such a fanboy that he wants to do the such more justice than they did in the first show. And as you can
Right.
see with the Iron Throne and how much more it looks like the Iron Throne of the books, and
I,
he's
that's
done a good.
another thing. I can't stand the way it looks, and there's just a bunch of random swords just sticking up out of the floor.
No, you don't like that. I think it makes it look a little closer.
No, I think it should have had more of a peacock behind it, just another couple of layers of the swords jagging out.
Yeah, you could have done that. You're right. He could have
Yeah.
built up like a second.
The design that was put out, the massive zigzag chair steps going up to this
Yep.
massively high
Yeah.
throne that you see in the books, that's beautiful. I mean, but once they
Exactly.
did what they did in the Game of
Right.
Thrones,
He did as much as he could to try and capture the spirit without without it requiring
Yeah.
major unexplained remodeling, right? That you could see Robert potentially cleaning that up, the parts
Yeah.
that he's gone.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, they should have asked my opinion on a couple of things. I'm not going to hold a grudge about that, but
Uh,
I still
yeah.
love my theories for the Jon Snow.
I was disappointed in. I was disappointed in the. I was a little disappointed in the northern storyline here, that where they totally rewrite history and do some weird stuff. Although they do mention that dragons can't go, that Alysanne and Jaehaerys' dragons can't go beyond the wall. That was kind of interesting.
Now, I wonder if they're going to play that off as Dany is half Stark. Oh no, they don't do that in the show. Never mind.
No, yeah, they'll just say that it was time and she was able to, or something, right?
Yeah, that magic had weakened just enough.
Yeah, something. I don't know. They're not really going to explain it.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, you still get to see that world. I mean, got anything else?
No, let's wrap it up. Have a good
Okay.
one.
All right. Well, enjoy your next week and tell your dad we all said happy birthday.
I will do.
And as everybody knows, I'd like to wish everybody a safe and happy weekend. We definitely appreciate you. Lady Thistle, I'll either get with you today or tomorrow to see if you want to try to do something next week as far as the theory video, one, possibly two. And y'all keep an eye out for that. And if not, we'll see you a week from now or less than a week from now. Skipping it. Yeah, definitely like the video.
More than a week from now. A week and a half from now.
Monday. There you go.
Next Monday.
Yeah. Something like that. But y'all take care, be good, and have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Or two.
Oops.